The cold barrel of the gun pressed against Emily's temple as snow fell silently around them. Her knees sank into the frozen snow on the rooftop, and she could taste the metallic flavor of fear in her mouth. Elliot was just 3 meters away, his normally controlled face now contorted in pure agony. Blood dripped from a wound on his shoulder, staining his white shirt vivid red against the immaculate white of the snow. The Christmas lights of Boston glowed below them, oblivious to the deadly drama unfolding on that frozen rooftop on Christmas Eve. The man behind her, reeking of cheap whiskey and violence, whispered in her ear with a voice that made her blood run cold. "Choose, Hayes. Your life or hers. You have 10 seconds." Elliot's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Emily saw something she never imagined seeing in the gaze of Boston's most dangerous man. Tears, genuine fear, and something deeper, something that had grown between them over the past 3 weeks, something neither of them had planned. "Love, Elliot, don't," Emily began, but the pressure of the gun increased, silencing her. 10, 9, 8. The man began the countdown. How had they gotten here? How had a simple event decorator become the weak point of the most feared man on the East Coast? The answer lay 3 weeks ago, when it all began with a phone call and a proposal that would change their lives forever. "Hi, my name is Rachel Ashwood, and today I'm going to tell you a story that will warm your heart and accelerate your heartbeat at the same time. If you love stories of redemption, forbidden romance, and breathtaking twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel so these stories can reach more people who deserve to hear them. Leave your like, share with someone special, and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to know where in the world you are right now." 3 weeks earlier, Emily Parker was sitting in her tiny office in the Back Bay neighborhood of Boston, surrounded by fabric samples, Christmas decoration catalogs, and bills she could barely pay. At 24 years old, she had bet everything on her dream of having her own event design company, especially Christmas-themed events. But reality was cruel. December was almost halfway through, and she had only 2 small contracts: a bland corporate party and the decoration of a neighborhood store. It wasn't enough to cover rent, much less to realize her dreams of expanding the business. She bit her lower lip, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood, as she looked at the pile of collection notices on her cluttered desk. Her mother had warned that working for herself would be difficult, especially in an expensive city like Boston. But Emily had always been stubborn. She believed that if she worked hard enough, if she put her heart into every project, success would come naturally. But life had other plans, and the universe seemed determined to test her resilience to the limit. The phone rang, breaking the heavy silence of the office. Emily looked at the device with suspicion. It was probably another creditor demanding payment. She considered not answering, but something made her reach out and pick up the phone. "Parker Events. Emily speaking," she said, trying to sound more professional and confident than she actually felt. "Miss Parker, my name is Marcus Webb. I'm executive assistant to Mr. Elliot Hayes. I found your portfolio online and was impressed with your work on themed Christmas decorations." The man's voice was formal, almost robotically polite, with a refined British accent that sounded completely out of place. Emily frowned. Elliot Hayes. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't put her finger on who exactly he was. Probably some rich Boston businessman she should know but didn't. "Thank you, Mr. Webb. How can I help you?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Mr. Hayes would like to hire your services to transform his Beacon Hill residence into a complete Christmas scene. He's willing to pay $50,000 for the project, with half advanced as soon as you accept. The work needs to be completed in 3 weeks by Christmas Eve." Emily almost dropped the phone. $50,000. That was more than she had earned all year. It would pay all her debts, cover rent for months, and still leave enough to invest in new equipment. It was literally a Christmas miracle falling into her lap. That's very generous," she stammered, trying to process the information. "May I ask why Mr. Hayes specifically chose my work? There are much larger and more established companies in Boston." There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if Marcus were carefully choosing his words. "Mr. Hayes appreciates authenticity and passion, Miss Parker. Your portfolio demonstrates both. He doesn't want something corporate or generic. He wants something that captures the true essence of Christmas. Something that brings warmth and life to his home. Can you do that?" Something in Marcus's voice sounded almost desperate, as if this project were more than just decoration, as if there were something deeper at stake. But Emily was too desperate to question her luck. "Yes, absolutely. When would Mr. Hayes like to meet to discuss the details? She asked, already grabbing her planner and a pen. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, at his residence. I'll send the address and contract details by email within an hour. Until tomorrow, Miss Parker. The call ended before Emily could respond. She sat in silence for a long moment, looking at the phone in her hand as if it were an alien object. $50,000. 3 weeks. A mysterious client who wanted to capture the essence of Christmas. It seemed too good to be true. And as she would soon discover, when something seems too good to be true, there's usually a very dark reason behind it. The next morning, Emily drove her old Honda Civic through the snow-covered streets of Boston toward Beacon Hill, one of the city's most exclusive and historic neighborhoods. The houses there were 19th-century mansions, with red brick facades, shiny black doors, and windows with antique glass that reflected the winter sunlight. It was the kind of place where old money families lived, where every house had a story and every stone in the sidewalks had been stepped on by generations of Boston elite. The address Marcus had sent led her to the end of a quiet street, where an imposing mansion rose behind wrought iron gates. The property was surrounded by high walls covered in dry ivy, and security cameras were strategically positioned at every corner. Emily felt a chill run up her spine. This didn't look like an ordinary businessman's house. It looked more like a fortress. She pressed the intercom button, and a voice responded immediately. "Miss Parker, come in. Mr. Hayes is waiting." The gates opened with an electronic buzz, and Emily drove slowly up the circular driveway to the main door. The mansion was even more impressive up close. 3 floors of impeccable Georgian architecture, with white columns flanking the entrance, and enormous windows that probably offered spectacular views of the city. But there was something cold about it, something missing. There were no Christmas decorations, no wreath on the door, no twinkling lights. It was as if Christmas didn't exist there. The door opened before she could knock, revealing a tall, thin, middle-aged man wearing an impeccable suit. Marcus Webb, she presumed. "Miss Parker, welcome. Please come in. May I take your coat?" Emily entered the entrance hall and immediately felt the temperature drop. Not physically, the house was heated, but there was an emotional coldness in the air, a sense of emptiness that no heater could dissipate. The interior was luxurious, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that was probably worth more than her entire house. But it was sterile, lifeless, like a museum instead of a home. "Mr. Hayes will receive you in his office. Please, follow me," Marcus said, guiding her down a long corridor decorated with old portraits of people Emily didn't recognize. They stopped before a double door of dark mahogany. Marcus knocked twice and then opened it, gesturing for her to enter. The office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a lit fireplace, and windows that offered a panoramic view of snow-covered Boston. But what captured Emily's attention was the man sitting behind the massive wooden desk. Elliot Hayes was 36 years old, but his eyes seemed to carry the weight of several lifetimes. He was tall, probably 6'3", with broad shoulders that perfectly filled his custom-made dark gray suit. His black hair was combed back, revealing a face with strong lines, a defined jaw, and eyes of a blue so intense they seemed to penetrate directly into her soul. There was a thin scar above his left eyebrow, and his hands, resting on the desk, showed slightly marked knuckles, like someone who knew how to fight. He was, without a doubt, the most handsome man Emily had ever seen, but there was something dangerous about him, something predatory in the way he observed her, like a wolf assessing its prey. "Miss Parker, thank you for coming," he said, his voice deep and controlled, each word pronounced with calculated precision. "Please sit down." Emily sat in the leather chair in front of the desk, feeling strangely vulnerable under that penetrating gaze. "Mr. Hayes, it's a pleasure to meet you. Marcus mentioned that you're interested in Christmas decoration for your home," she began, trying to sound professional despite the nerves that made her hands tremble slightly. "Yes, I want you to transform this house. I want lights, trees, wreaths, everything that represents Christmas. I want every room to breathe the essence of this season. No budget limits. You have carte blanche to do whatever you think necessary." Emily blinked, surprised. "That's very generous. May I ask what motivated this decision?" "Marcus mentioned that you wanted something authentic, something that would bring warmth and life." For a brief moment, something passed through Elliot's eyes. Pain, loss, regret. But it disappeared so quickly that Emily thought she had imagined it. "Let's just say I've neglected Christmas for too long. This year, I want to change that," he replied, his voice carefully neutral. There was more to this story. Emily could feel it. But she wasn't there to ask personal questions. She was there to do her job and earn the money that would change her life. I understand. I'll need complete access to the house to assess the spaces and plan the decoration. I'll also need to know if there's any specific theme or color you prefer, or if I can have total creative freedom. Total creative freedom. Marcus will provide the keys and security codes. You can come and go as you wish. I'm rarely home during the day, so you'll have privacy to work. He opened a drawer and removed a thick envelope, sliding it across the desk toward her. $25,000, as agreed. The other half will be paid when the work is completed on Christmas Eve. Emily took the envelope with trembling hands. It was real. This was really happening. She opened it and saw the checks inside, each with more zeros than she was used to seeing. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I promise you won't regret it. I'll transform your house into something magical. For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched Elliot's lips. I'm counting on it, Miss Parker. As Emily left the mansion minutes later, with the signed contract and the check secure in her purse, she couldn't imagine that she had just made a deal with the most dangerous man in Boston. Elliot Hayes wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was the invisible boss of one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the East Coast, a man whose name was whispered with fear in dark alleys and clandestine meeting rooms, and she had just entered his world without knowing she would never be the same again. The first days of work were surprisingly peaceful. Emily arrived every morning at 8, carrying boxes of decorations, rolls of lights, and bags full of carefully selected ornaments. Marcus was always there to receive her, polite but distant, and Elliot never appeared. The house was hers to transform as she wished, and transform she did. Emily started with the main living room, an enormous space with high ceilings and a marble fireplace that dominated an entire wall. She brought in a 10-foot Christmas tree, so large she needed help from 2 delivery men to position it. She spent hours decorating each branch with red and gold balls, velvet ribbons, small bells that tinkled softly, and warm white lights that made the tree glow as if it were covered in stars. She hung fresh pine wreaths on the stairs, tied with red bows and small holly branches. She placed scented candles of cinnamon and pine in every room, filling the house with aromas that evoked memories of Christmases past. In the windows, she installed lights that blinked softly, creating a welcoming glow that could be seen from the street. Each day, Elliot Hayes's cold and lifeless house gained more color, more warmth, more soul. It was as if Emily were bringing the house back to life, one ornament at a time. But there was something strange. Sometimes when she was working, she had the distinct sensation of being watched. She would turn quickly, but never saw anyone. The security cameras were everywhere, of course, so technically she was always being watched. But this was different. It was a physical presence, almost palpable. On the 5th night, while she was at the top of a ladder adjusting a wreath above the library door, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned so quickly that she almost lost her balance, and strong hands caught her by the waist, stabilizing her. Careful, a deep voice said. Emily looked down and met Elliot Hayes's intense blue eyes. He was so close she could feel the warmth of his body, the smell of his expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. Her heart raced, but not just from fright. Mr. Hayes, Sorry, I didn't hear you arrive, she stammered, descending from the ladder with his hands still holding her until her feet touched the ground safely. No need to apologize. I should have announced my presence, he said, finally releasing her, but not stepping away. His eyes scanned the decorated library, the soft lights, the carefully positioned ornaments, the small tree in the corner with books wrapped like presents underneath it. You're transforming my house, he said softly, and there was something in his voice that Emily couldn't identify. Admiration? Sadness? Longing? It's my job, she replied, trying to ignore the way her heart was still beating fast. No, it's more than that. You're putting your soul into it. I can see it. Every detail, every choice, has meaning. Why? The question caught her off guard. Emily bit her lip, considering her response. Because Christmas has always meant something special to me. When I was a child, my family didn't have much money, but every Christmas my mother transformed our small house into something magical. She made decorations from recycled materials, baked cookies that filled the house with the most incredible smell, and made us feel like we were the richest people in the world. She taught me that Christmas isn't about money or expensive gifts. It's about creating moments of warmth, love, and hope. It's about remembering that even on the darkest days of winter, there is light. Emily stopped, realizing she had shared too much. But when she looked at Elliot, she saw that he was looking at her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman," he said softly. "She was. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. This is my 3rd Christmas without her. I'm sorry for your loss." There was something genuine in his voice, an understanding that came from someone who also knew loss intimately. "And you?" Emily heard herself asking before she could stop herself. "Why did you stop celebrating Christmas?" Elliot's expression closed immediately, the walls going back up around him. "That's a story for another day," he said, his voice returning to that controlled and distant tone. "Continue with your excellent work, Miss Parker. The house is becoming different." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door, looking back. "And Emily? You can call me Elliot. Mr. Hayes makes me feel old." Then he disappeared down the corridor, leaving Emily alone with her racing heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. But one thing she knew for sure, there was much more to Elliot Hayes than appeared, and against all her good sense, she wanted to find out what. In the following days, Elliot began to appear more frequently, never for very long, just a few minutes here and there, watching Emily work, asking occasional questions about her decoration choices, sometimes even helping to carry heavy boxes or reach high places. Emily began to look forward to these moments. There was something magnetic about Elliot, something that attracted her despite all the warning signs her instinct was screaming. He was an enigma, a man of contradictions. He could be cold and distant one moment, and then show glimpses of vulnerability and humor the next. One afternoon, while she was decorating the enormous kitchen with cranberry and dried orange garlands, Elliot came in and leaned against the counter watching her work. "Can I ask a personal question?" he said suddenly. Emily looked at him surprised. "Sure. Why do you do this? Event design, I mean. You clearly have talent. You could work for a big company, have stability. Why risk everything on your own business?" Emily smiled, continuing to tie the garlands. "Because I don't want to spend my life doing what's safe. I want to do what makes me feel alive. My mother always said that life is too short to live in fear. So when she died, I decided to honor her memory by doing exactly that, pursuing my dreams, no matter how scary it is." Elliot was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on her with that intensity that made her heart skip. "You're brave," he said finally. "Or stupid," Emily laughed. "Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference." "No, it's not stupidity. It's inspiring." There was something in his voice that made Emily stop what she was doing and look at him. For the first time, she saw beyond the cold mask he always wore. She saw a tired man, a man carrying burdens she couldn't imagine, a man who had forgotten how to dream. "Elliot, can I ask a personal question now?" she asked softly. He hesitated, but then nodded. "What happened? What made you stop celebrating Christmas?" Elliot's jaw tightened, and for a moment Emily thought he would leave without answering. But then he sighed, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of vulnerability. 10 years ago, I had a family. A wife, Sarah, and a daughter, Lily. She was only 5 years old. On Christmas Eve, we were driving to my parents' house for dinner. The roads were icy. It was snowing heavily. A truck lost control and they didn't survive. I was driving. I survived without a scratch, but His voice failed, and Emily felt tears burn her eyes. "Elliot, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Nobody knows. I don't talk about it. After that day, Christmas ceased to exist for me. Every light, every song, every ornament, everything reminded me of what I had lost. So I just stopped. Stopped celebrating, stopped feeling, stopped really living. I just existed." Emily stepped down from the chair where she was standing and walked over to him, without thinking, without planning. She placed her hand over his, which was clenched in a fist on the counter. "You didn't cause the accident, Elliot. It was a tragedy, but it wasn't your fault. I know that here," he said, touching his head. "But here," he placed his hand over his heart. "I could never believe it. That's why you hired me, isn't it? It's not just about decoration. It's about trying to find your way back, trying to feel again." Elliot looked at her, and for the first time she saw tears glistening in his eyes. "I don't know if it's possible, but when I saw your work, the passion you put into every detail, I thought that maybe you could help me remember what it's like to feel something besides pain." Emily squeezed his hand, and in that moment, something changed between them. It was no longer just a client and a decorator. It was two wounded souls finding comfort in each other, two people who understood loss and pain in ways that words could never fully express. "Let's do this together," she said softly. "Let's bring Christmas back, not just to your house, but to your heart." And for the first time in 10 years, Elliot Hayes smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up his face and made Emily realize she was in danger. Not the kind of danger she should fear, but the kind of danger that comes when you start to care about someone you know can break your heart. But she didn't care, because in that moment, seeing that smile, she knew it would be worth any pain that might come. What she didn't know was that the real danger was just beginning, and it had nothing to do with broken hearts. The second week of work brought a noticeable change. Elliot began to spend more time at home, not just watching Emily work, but actively participating. He helped her hang lights, position ornaments, even choose Christmas songs to play while they worked. The house that had once been a silent mausoleum now echoed with laughter and conversations. Emily discovered that Elliot had a dry and intelligent sense of humor that caught her off guard. He made sarcastic comments about the most extravagant ornaments she brought, but always with an amused gleam in his eyes that showed he was just joking. And slowly, very slowly, she began to see the man he was before the tragedy, the man who still existed under all those layers of pain and guilt. One afternoon, while they were decorating the formal dining room, Emily brought a box full of vintage ornaments she had found at a thrift store. They were old pieces, some over 50 years old, each with its own story and unique character. "These are special," she explained, carefully removing a delicate glass angel from the box. "Each of them belonged to someone, was part of other families' Christmases. When you use vintage ornaments, you're honoring those memories, keeping them alive." Elliot took the angel from her hands, examining it carefully. There was something in his expression that Emily couldn't read. "Sarah collected angels," he said softly. "She had dozens of them. After the accident, I donated everything. I couldn't look at them without remembering." Emily finished for him. "I understand. I did the same thing with my mother's things. I donated almost everything because it was too painful. But now I regret it. Because these things aren't just objects. They're connections to the people we love. And when they're gone, those connections become even more precious." Elliot looked at her, and there was an intensity in his gaze that made the air between them seem electrically charged. "You're very wise for someone so young," he said. "I'm not wise. I just learned the hard way that running from pain doesn't make it disappear. You have to face it, feel it, and then let it transform you into something stronger." "And are you stronger now?" Emily thought for a moment, really considering the question. "Yes, but I'm also softer. Pain taught me empathy, taught me to value every moment, every connection. It taught me that life is fragile and precious, and that we shouldn't waste it living in fear or regret." Elliot placed the angel back in the box with reverent care. "You make me want to believe it's possible to start over, that it's not too late for me." "It's never too late, Elliot. As long as you're still breathing, there's still hope. There's still the possibility of change, of healing, of happiness." He took a step toward her, closing the distance between them until they were just inches apart. Emily could feel the warmth of his body, see the small golden flecks in his blue eyes, count every beat of her own racing heart. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse and low, "you're making me feel things I thought I'd never feel again. And that scares me more than anything I've ever faced." "Why does it scare you?" she whispered. "Because everything I touch, I destroy. Everyone who gets close to me ends up getting hurt. I don't want that to happen to you. Elliot, you're not responsible for the accident. You didn't destroy your family. It was a tragedy, but it wasn't your fault. It's not just about the accident," he said, and there was something dark in his voice now, something that sent a chill down Emily's spine. "There are things about me you don't know, things that, if you knew, you'd run in the opposite direction. Then tell me." "Let me decide for myself." Elliot looked at her for a long moment, clearly struggling internally. Then he stepped back, running his hands over his face in frustration. "I can't. Not yet. Just trust me when I say you should keep your distance, for your own safety." But it was too late for that, and they both knew it. The distance between them had already been crossed. The lines had already been blurred. They were falling for each other, and there was no safety net to catch them. Emily should have listened to the warning, should have asked questions, investigated, discovered who Elliot Hayes really was. But she was so caught up in the magic of what was growing between them that she ignored all the warning signs. And that would be a decision that would almost cost her life. It was in the third week that everything began to fall apart. Emily was working alone in the mansion, putting the finishing touches on the entrance hall decoration, when she heard raised voices coming from Elliot's office. She knew she should ignore it, that it was none of her business, but the urgency and anger in the voices made her pause. "You're getting careless, Elliot," a male voice growled. "Letting a civilian come and go freely from your house? Have you lost your mind?" "She's a decorator, Vincent." "Not a threat," Elliot's voice replied, tense but controlled. "Every person is a potential threat in our business, especially now, with the Morellis breathing down our necks. They're looking for any weakness, any leverage they can use against you. Emily has nothing to do with this. She doesn't even know who I am." "Exactly. And when she finds out, when she realizes she's working for the man who controls half of Boston's underworld, what do you think will happen?" Emily felt her blood run cold. Boston's underworld, controls. The words echoed in her mind, refusing to make sense. Elliot couldn't be. He wasn't. "She won't find out," Elliot said, his voice now with a dangerous edge. "And you'll make sure no one gets near her. Understood? You're getting attached, boss. An attachment is weakness. You know that better than anyone. Get out, Vincent. Now." Emily heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly returned to the stairs, pretending to be adjusting a wreath. The office door opened, and a tall, muscular man came out, wearing an expensive black suit. His eyes met Emily's for a brief moment, and what she saw there made her swallow hard. Cold assessment, calculation, threat. Then he passed her without a word and left through the front door. Emily stood on the stairs, her heart beating so hard she was sure it could be heard throughout the house. Boston's underworld. The words kept echoing. She thought about all the security cameras, the high gates, the way Marcus always seemed to be on alert, as if expecting trouble at any moment. The signs were all there. She just hadn't wanted to see them. "Emily." She turned and saw Elliot standing in the office doorway, his face pale, his eyes full of something that looked like fear. "How much did you hear?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. She could have lied, could have pretended she hadn't heard anything, but Emily had never been good at lying. "Enough," she said, descending from the stairs slowly. "Who are you really, Elliot?" He closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage. When he opened them again, there was a resignation in them that broke Emily's heart. "Come, you deserve the truth." She followed him back to the office, each step seeming heavier than the last. Elliot closed the door behind them and went to the window, looking at the city below. "My name is Elliot Hayes, that's true. But I'm not just a businessman. I control an organization that operates behind the scenes in Boston. Businesses that most people prefer to pretend don't exist." "You're a criminal," Emily said, her voice coming out more as a statement than a question. "Yes, although I prefer to think of myself as someone who provides services that others can't or won't provide. But yes, in the eyes of the law, I'm a criminal." Emily felt as if the ground were disappearing beneath her feet. Everything made sense now. The inexplicable wealth, the extreme security, the way people spoke to him with a mixture of respect and fear. "You lied to me," she said, and there was pain in her voice that she didn't try to hide. "I didn't lie. I just omitted. And I did it to protect you. The less you knew, the safer you'd be." "Safe from what? From whom?" Elliot turned to face her, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes she had never seen before. "From me, from my world. From the people who want to destroy me, and who wouldn't hesitate to use you to do it. Emily, I never should have let you into my life, but I was selfish. You brought light to my darkness, and I couldn't resist. But now you're in danger, and it's all my fault." "What kind of danger?" "There are people, rival organizations, who are looking for ways to weaken me. If they find out that you mean something to me, and you do, Emily, more than you should, they'll try to use you against me." Emily felt tears burn her eyes. Part of her wanted to run, leave that house and never look back. But another part, a bigger part, remembered the last 3 weeks, remembered the conversations, the laughter, the way Elliot looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, remembered the broken man she had helped begin to heal. "You gave me a choice when you hired me," she said finally. "Now give me another. Let me decide if I want to take the risk." "Emily, you don't understand what you're saying. This isn't a movie. People in my world don't play around. They kill, torture, destroy. I can't guarantee your safety no matter how much I want to. Then teach me. Teach me how to protect myself. Teach me how to navigate your world." But don't push me away, Elliot. Not now. Not when we've finally found something real. Elliot crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, taking her face between his hands. "You're crazy," he said, but there was admiration in his voice. "Completely, wonderfully crazy. Maybe. But you make me want to be brave. You make me want to fight for something worthwhile. What if I hurt you? What if my world destroys you? Then at least I will have lived. At least I will have loved. Because that's what's happening here, Elliot. I'm falling in love with you. And I think you're falling in love with me too." For a long moment, Elliot just looked at her, his eyes searching hers as if trying to memorize every detail. Then, slowly, he tilted his head and kissed her. It was a kiss full of desperation and hope, fear and courage, darkness and light. It was a kiss that sealed their fate, for better or worse. And when they finally separated, both were breathless, both knowing they had crossed a point of no return. "I will protect you," Elliot promised, his forehead resting against hers. "With my life, if necessary. Nothing will hurt you while I'm breathing." It was a promise he would do everything to keep, but fate had other plans. Because at that exact moment, across the city, men were gathering. Men who had noticed the decorator who came and went from Elliot Hayes' mansion. Men who saw an opportunity, a weakness, a way to finally bring down the man who had been invincible for so long. And they were planning to strike on Christmas Eve, when Elliot's guard would be down, when he would be distracted by the first happiness he had felt in a decade. The clock was ticking, and neither of them knew they had only days before everything would explode in violence and blood. The following days were a strange mixture of happiness and tension. Emily finished decorating the mansion, transforming it into a true Christmas wonderland. Every room glowed with lights. Every surface had a touch of festive magic. It was her best work, a masterpiece that perfectly captured the essence of Christmas she loved so much. But now she saw everything through a different lens. She noticed the security men Elliot had discreetly positioned around the property. She noticed how he always checked his phone, always alert, always waiting for trouble. She noticed the whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. Elliot tried to keep her away from the darker aspects of his life, but Emily wasn't stupid. She saw the late-night meetings, the dangerous-looking men who came and went, the tensions that seemed to increase with each passing day. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" she asked one night, as they sat in the living room, the Christmas tree glowing softly in the background. Elliot didn't try to lie to her. He had promised honesty, and he would keep that promise. "Yes, the Morellis are getting more aggressive. They attacked 2 of my warehouses last week. It's a declaration of war. And what are you going to do? What I have to do. Protect what's mine. Protect the people who depend on me. And protect you." Emily moved closer to him on the sofa, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'm not afraid, you know. Not of you, not of your world. The only thing that scares me is the idea of losing you." Elliot pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "You won't lose me. I promise. After Christmas, I'll resolve this once and for all, and then we can have a normal life, or as close to normal as someone like me can have. I don't need normal. I just need you." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in the soft light of the Christmas tree, pretending for a moment that they were just 2 normal people in love, without dangers, without threats, without the weight of a dark world pressing on them. But the illusion couldn't last forever. On Christmas Eve, Emily arrived at the mansion early, carrying one last box of ornaments and a carefully wrapped gift for Elliot. She had spent weeks looking for the perfect gift, something meaningful, something that would show how important he had become to her. Marcus received her at the door, but there was something different in his expression. Worry, tension. "Miss Parker, perhaps it would be better if you came back later. Mr. Hayes is busy with urgent matters." "Is everything okay?" she asked, feeling her stomach tighten with apprehension. "Just business matters. Nothing you need to worry about." But Emily could hear raised voices coming from the office. She recognized Elliot's voice, tense and furious, and other voices she didn't know. "They know about her," a voice was saying. "They have photos, videos, everything. They're going to use her, Elliot. You need to send her away now, before it's too late." "No one's going to touch her," Elliot growled. "I don't care how many men they have. I will protect her. You can't be everywhere at once. Be rational. Send her away, somewhere safe, until this is over." Emily didn't wait to hear more. She pushed the office door open and entered, ignoring Marcus's protest behind her. Elliot was standing behind his desk, surrounded by 4 men she recognized as part of his security team. They all turned when she entered, and the expression on Elliot's face was a mixture of relief and terror. "Emily, you shouldn't be here," he said, quickly coming around the desk. "I heard. They know about me. They're going to use me against you. I won't let that happen. I'll put you on a plane today. Send you somewhere they can never find you." "No," Emily said firmly. "I'm not going to run. I'm not going to let you face this alone. Emily, be reasonable. These people don't play around. They'll hurt you, or worse, just to get to me. Then let me stay here, where you can protect me. This house is a fortress. You have security, cameras, everything. I'll be safer here than anywhere else." Elliot looked at her, clearly torn. He wanted to keep her close. She could see it in his eyes, but he was also terrified at the idea of something happening to her. "Please," Emily said softly, placing her hand on his face. "Don't push me away. Not now. It's Christmas Eve. Let me stay." Finally, Elliot nodded, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You're too stubborn for your own good," he murmured into her hair. "I learned from the best," she replied, making him laugh despite the tension. But the moment of levity was interrupted by the sound of Elliot's phone ringing. He looked at the screen and his face paled. "It's them," he said, answering and putting it on speakerphone. "Hayes," a voice with an Italian accent said, drawling and confident. "Merry Christmas. I hope you're enjoying the decorations. I heard you hired a very talented decorator. Emily Parker, right? Young, beautiful, full of life. It would be a shame if something happened to her." Emily's blood ran cold. They knew her name. They knew who she was. "If you lay a finger on her, Morelli, I'll burn your empire to the ground and make you watch," Elliot said, his voice low and deadly. "Ah, but you see, Hayes, you can't be everywhere at once. And we're very patient. Sooner or later, she'll leave that fortress of yours. And when that happens, we'll be waiting. Unless what? Unless you give me what I want. The port territories, the import operations, everything. You withdraw, and the girl lives. You have until midnight to decide. Merry Christmas, Hayes." The call ended, leaving a heavy silence in the office. Emily looked at Elliot and saw something she had never seen before in his eyes. Pure and absolute fear, not for himself, but for her. "You're not going to do that," she said firmly. "You're not going to give up everything you've built because of me." "I would give up everything for you," Elliot said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "None of this matters if you're not here." "Elliot, no. There has to be another way." "There isn't. Not when it comes to you. You're more important than any business, any territory, any power. You brought me back to life, Emily. You made me remember what it's like to feel, to hope, to love. I'm not going to let them take that from me. I'm not going to let them take you." Tears were streaming down Emily's face now, and she didn't try to hide them. "There has to be another way," she repeated, but her voice was weak, desperate. One of Elliot's security men, a large man named Derek, cleared his throat. "Boss, what if we go to them? Preemptive strike. They won't expect us to make a move on Christmas Eve." Elliot considered this, his mind clearly working through the possibilities. "How many men do they have at the main warehouse?" "Intelligence says about 20, maybe 25, but we can gather 30, easy." "And the Morellis? Where are they?" "Probably at their mansion in Brookline. But it's fortified, boss. It would be suicide to try to get in there." Elliot was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant, calculating. Then he looked at Emily, and she saw the decision form in his eyes. "Let's do it. Gather the men. We attack the warehouse in 1 hour. Meanwhile, Emily stays here with maximum security. No one in, no one out." "Elliot, no," Emily protested. "It's too dangerous. What if something happens to you?" He took her face between his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Nothing's going to happen to me. I promise. I'll resolve this, and then we'll have our Christmas together. Just the two of us. No threats. No dangers. Just us." He kissed her, a deep and desperate kiss, as if it were the last. And then he pulled away, already shifting into command mode, giving orders, planning strategies. Emily stood there, watching him transform into the man he was in the outside world. Cold, calculating, dangerous. It was scary to see, but it was also impressive. This was the man who had built an empire in the shadows, the man others feared. But to her, he would always be just Elliot, the man who had lost everything and was trying to find his way back, the man she loved. I love you, she said suddenly, the words coming out before she could stop them. Elliot stopped mid-sentence, slowly turning to look at her. For a moment, no one else existed in the room. It was just the two of them, connected by something stronger than fear, stronger than danger. I love you too, he said, his voice full of an emotion that made Emily's heart ache. And that's why I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Then he left, his men following behind him, leaving Emily alone with Marcus and 2 security guards. She sat on the office sofa, hugging herself, trying not to think about all the terrible things that could happen, trying not to imagine Elliot hurt, or worse. The hours passed slowly. Marcus tried to get her to eat, but she couldn't swallow anything. She just sat there, watching the clock, counting every minute that passed. Then, at 11 at night, 1 hour before midnight, before Morelli's deadline, everything fell apart. The lights suddenly went out, plunging the mansion into darkness. Emily heard screams, the sound of breaking glass, and then gunshots. Many gunshots. Marcus grabbed her, pulling her down behind the sofa. Stay down, he hissed. They're here. Emily's heart was beating so hard she thought it would explode. How had they gotten in? How had they gotten past security? The answer came seconds later, when the office door was broken down and armed men invaded. Marcus tried to protect her, but was knocked down with a brutal blow to the head. The security guards were overpowered before they could react. And then rough hands grabbed Emily, pulling her up, dragging her out of the office. No, she screamed, fighting, kicking, doing everything she could to break free. But they were too strong, too many. They dragged her down the stairs, through the entrance hall she had decorated with so much love, past the Christmas tree that now seemed like a cruel mockery. They took her outside, into the cutting cold of Christmas night, where a car was waiting. But then, out of nowhere, more gunshots. The men holding her fell, and Emily found herself free, running blindly through the snow. Emily! Elliot's voice cut through the night. He was there, covered in blood, his face a mask of fury and fear. Run! But before she could reach him, more men appeared. A brutal fight ensued, fists and bullets flying. Emily saw Elliot take down 3 men, but then a 4th appeared behind him, hitting him with the butt of a gun. Elliot fell to his knees, blood dripping from a wound on his head. No, Emily screamed, running toward him. But hands grabbed her again, and this time there was no escape. They dragged her to the mansion's rooftop, using the external fire escape. The icy wind cut her face. The snow fell heavily, and below her, she could see Boston's lights shining, oblivious to the nightmare that was happening. And then Elliot was there, climbing after them, his face determined despite the blood staining his shirt. He reached the rooftop, and for a moment, Emily thought they might escape. But then the man behind her pressed a gun against her head, and everything stopped. Choose, Hayes, your life or hers. You have 10 seconds. And suddenly, Emily was back at the moment that had started this story. The moment when everything was about to end, or begin, depending on the choices they would make in the next few seconds. 10, 9, 8. Elliot's eyes met hers, and she saw everything there. Love, fear, desperation, determination. 7, 6, 5. Emily made her decision. She wasn't going to let Elliot sacrifice himself for her. She wasn't going to let the man she loved die because of her. 4, 3. With all the strength she had, Emily threw her head back, hitting the nose of the man behind her. He screamed in pain, the gun moving away from her head for just a second. But a second was all Elliot needed. He moved faster than Emily thought possible, crossing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. He ripped the gun from the man's hand and knocked him down with a brutal punch. But the man wasn't alone. 3 more appeared, and suddenly Elliot was fighting all of them at once, protecting Emily with his own body. A shot rang out, and Emily saw Elliot stagger, blood blooming on his shoulder. But he didn't stop. He kept fighting, kept protecting, until finally, reinforcements arrived. Elliot's men stormed the rooftop, and the fight ended as quickly as it had begun. The attackers were subdued, disarmed, neutralized, and then it was just Emily and Elliot, standing in the snow on the rooftop, both wounded, both exhausted, but both alive. Elliot fell to his knees, and Emily ran to him, taking his face between her hands. Are you okay? Elliot, talk to me. I'm fine, he said, his voice weak but firm. You're safe. That's all that matters. "You were shot, you idiot. You need a hospital. I've been through worse," he said, trying to smile but grimacing in pain. "But maybe you're right. I think I'm going to need some stitches." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she helped him stand, his arm around her for support. "Never again," she said fiercely. "Never again will you put yourself in danger like that because of me." "I can't promise that," Elliot said, looking at her with those intense blue eyes she had learned to love. "Because I will always protect you. Always. No matter the cost." "Then let's make a deal," Emily said, as they slowly descended from the rooftop, surrounded by Elliot's security. "We protect each other. Together. No heroic sacrifices. No throwing yourself in front of bullets. We face everything together. Or we face nothing." Elliot stopped, turning to look at her despite the pain she knew he was feeling. "Together," he repeated, and there was a promise in that word that went beyond just this night, beyond just this danger. It was a promise of a future, of a life, of everything they could build if they just survived this. "Together," Emily confirmed, sealing the promise with a kiss. 3 hours later, Emily was sitting in an uncomfortable chair at the private hospital where Elliot had been taken. The doctors had removed the bullet from his shoulder and stitched the wound on his head. He would have scars, they said, but he would recover completely. The Morellis had been neutralized. The attack on Elliot's warehouse had been successful, and with the failed attempt to kidnap Emily, they had lost any advantage they thought they had. The war had ended before it really began, but the cost had been high. 3 of Elliot's men were dead, 5 wounded. Marcus was in surgery, with severe head trauma but stable. Emily looked at Elliot sleeping in the hospital bed, his face pale but peaceful. She held his hand, intertwining her fingers with his, and made a silent promise. They would overcome this. They would build something better, something safer. Elliot had talked about getting out of the business, about finding a way to live a more normal life, and Emily was going to help him do that, no matter how long it took, because what they had was rare. It was precious. It was worth fighting for. Elliot's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her. A weak smile touched his lips. "You're still here," he said, his voice hoarse. "Where else would I be?" Emily replied, squeezing his hand. "I thought maybe you'd realized I'm too much trouble and had run away." "You are too much trouble," Emily agreed, smiling through tears. "But you're my trouble, and I'm not going anywhere." Elliot pulled her hand, bringing her closer until she was sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm getting out," he said suddenly. "Of the business, I mean. I'll find a way to step away, to build something legitimate. It won't be easy, and it will take time, but I'll do it. For you, for us. Are you sure? Elliot, I don't want you to give up everything because of me. It's not because of you. Well, not just because of you. It's for me too. These last few weeks you've shown me that there's more to life than power and control. You've shown me that it's possible to feel again, to hope again, to love again. And I want that. I want a life where I don't have to look over my shoulder constantly, where I can wake up next to you without worrying if this will be the day everything falls apart. It will take time," Emily said softly, "and it won't be easy, but I'll be by your side every step of the way, even knowing who I am, what I've done, especially knowing who you are, because I see the man you're becoming, not just the man you were, and that man, Elliot Hayes, is someone worth fighting for." Elliot pulled her into a kiss, gentle this time, full of promise and hope instead of desperation and fear. When they separated, he smiled, a real and genuine smile that lit up his entire face. "Merry Christmas, Emily." Emily looked at the clock on the wall. It was 5 past midnight, officially Christmas Day. Merry Christmas, Elliot. And despite everything that had happened, despite the blood and the violence and the fear, Emily felt something warm and bright blossom in her chest. Hope. Because they had survived. They had fought and won. And now, finally, they had the chance to build something new, something better, a future together. 1 year later, snow fell softly over Boston as Emily put the finishing touches on the Christmas tree. But this time, it wasn't at the Beacon Hill mansion. It was in a smaller, cozier house, in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Elliot had kept his promise. He had stepped away from the business, selling his operations to a trusted associate and investing the money in legitimate ventures. Now, he ran a private security company, using his skills and connections to protect people instead of threatening them. It hadn't been easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the old world tried to pull him back. But Emily was there, always there, reminding him why he had made that choice. And slowly, day by day, They built a life together. A real life, with normal dinners and silly arguments and plans for the future. "It's perfect," Elliot's voice said behind her. Emily turned and smiled at seeing him standing in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He was wearing a ridiculously ugly Christmas sweater she had insisted he buy, and he had never looked more handsome to her. "The tree or me?" she joked. "Both," he replied, handing her a mug and pulling her into his arms. "But especially you." They stood like that for a moment, watching the tree glow, listening to Christmas songs playing softly in the background. "Do you regret it?" Emily asked suddenly. "Everything you gave up?" Elliot looked at her, his blue eyes full of a love that still made her heart skip, not for a second. "Because I gained something much more valuable. I gained you. I gained a life worth living. I gained the chance to be the man I always wanted to be, but never thought I could." "I love you," Emily said, the words coming easily now, naturally, like breathing. "I love you too, more than words can express." He put his mug aside and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Emily's heart stopped. "Emily Parker," Elliot said, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "You saved me. You brought me back to life when I was just existing. You showed me that redemption is possible, that love is real, and that it's never too late to start over. Will you spend the rest of your life helping me be a better man? Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Emily's face, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times. Yes." Elliot slid the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into a kiss that promised 1,000 future Christmases, 1,000 moments of happiness, a lifetime of love. When they finally separated, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "Best Christmas present ever," Emily said, admiring the ring on her finger. "No," Elliot corrected, pulling her back into his arms. "You are the best Christmas present. You always will be." And as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the world in a white and pure blanket, Emily and Elliot stood together under the Christmas tree, 2 survivors who had found redemption in each other's arms. Because sometimes, the best gifts come wrapped in danger. Sometimes, the truest love is born from darkness. And sometimes, just sometimes, even the most broken hearts can be healed by the magic of Christmas and the power of true love. I hope this story warmed your heart as much as it warmed mine writing it. If you enjoyed it, leave your like, share with someone special, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know what corner of the world you're in right now. Subscribe to the channel so these stories can reach more people who need to hear them. And remember, it's never too late to start over. Merry Christmas to all.